That's why we got the virtual backgrounds. One of the many original use cases for augmented reality. Get rid of all the stuff
Oh
behind
man,
you.
this one's a bit messed up. My face is the suspension bridge.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of things that might go a little bit haywire with augmented reality, so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Um,
How you doing? How was your break? How was your new year?
oh, bro, it's been really, really sort of interesting last couple of weeks. Um, when you're not really expecting like a breakdown or a conflict to happen, and then it does. So for me, I guess I try not to look at things in the context of, or try not to look at things in the context of good and bad, but of like how I can grow from them.
Mm.
So the beginning of the year has been filled with a lot of, let's say, growth opportunities for me.
Oh, I see.
Right.
That's
Uh,
awesome, man. I
yeah.
respect that. That's really cool. I like the way you look at that. I can.
Thank you.
It's a testament to your person, your who you are. I think because yeah, I'm trying to be more like that, but I find myself bringing myself into the victim mode a little bit. Like, why is this happening to me, not other people, things like that. But you're right. It's so much better to look at it like, okay, what is it trying to teach me? Like, what can I learn from this, and how can I grow? So yeah, that's awesome. It's really good for him.
So key point is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it feels like that in the moment, because I think we all have this sort of like visceral reaction to conflict where like we want to sort of like protect ourselves, especially in the context where we feel like we're being attacked or made wrong or
Mm,
something like that. But like within that visceral physical reaction, there's the ability to like step back and observe, like look at the things
yeah.
that are happening versus like really engage with them. And for me, it just took a really long time to like figure that out. And there's a really beautiful book I love called Nonviolent Communication, which gave me a process to like look at things non-judgmentally and without giving them like necessarily a flavor. Hugely beneficial. How about you? How's life have been for you? How was New Year's? How's your new place?
Yeah, good. Yeah, a lot of stuff's happened in the last couple of months. Um, and it's just, I sort of tried to have a break over Christmas. Like I was forcing myself to actually not work too much. But the stuff I did was more like planning and like organization and stuff like that, which is good because it tends to be the only stuff I can do when I'm not in the midst of other stuff. Like it's only like a reflection period. So that was really good. And then coming back into the new year, just, everyone coming back from their holidays and stuff, connecting with people. Some pretty good opportunities have come up with some potentially quite big brands, but nothing's like confirmed yet. But from the stuff that we've done already, it seems like it's now spring loading like opportunities with, very similar stuff. So I might go ahead and close the door because it's Vietnam and it's super loud here.
Well, we
But
can
yeah,
talk
it's been
about
good.
this. We can talk about this in the call, but I think that you're way ahead. Like you're way ahead of everybody.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
like I think you're probably, and you could correct me, maybe 3 to 5 years ahead on augmented reality in terms of like it really like coming to fruition as a technology,
Mm,
in terms of mass use. And we kind of saw this with GPT, like nobody was talking about it for the last, probably 2 or 3 years. And then as soon as Chat GPT was released, now it has quickly accelerated its pace of adoption.
it's crazy.
Um,
Yeah.
but before we get into that, I want to talk about you for a little bit. I kind of just want to jump into who you are, like your sort of like main character backstory, so the audience can get to know you a little bit. I know you as a pioneer in augmented reality, like one of the original voices that I've seen in the digital marketing community specifically. So would love to hear just a little bit about you, how you got into augmented reality, like what that looks like in terms of your story.
Yeah. Awesome. I respect that. I appreciate that because that's a lot of the times I feel like because if you're doing something other people aren't doing, you question it a lot. Like, oh, actually, is there something in this? But then there's some sort of driving intuition I have of like, I just know this is going to be either like a huge thing or a very big thing. So yeah, I guess my background is in digital advertising. So I've been doing Facebook, Instagram, media buying, and then creative strategy for mainly for like women and children, sort of family brands, things like that for about 8 years now. So yeah, I've been, around the block in terms of digital advertising. And towards the end of 2021, just because of what happened in that year with, the iOS changes and lack of granular data. And because I was like more focused on creative strategies, I basically had to come up with a whole new way I looked at creative. And it sort of proved the model of how that should have always been the main focus for people. But I guess I fell into like relying on the algorithm a little bit too much. But towards the end of the year, I started to look at other ways of using creative to try and bridge that gap between the brand and the audience and the people I was working with within the agency I was working with, which is actually, they were based in Australia. And I came across augmented reality ads, and I was just thinking, why am I not really seeing that many people doing that? So I started to experiment with the brands I was working at the time, and we had absolutely astronomical results. Like the improvements on the campaign performance was so good. I just thought, well, there's not really a service like this, so why not create that service and bridge that gap between brands and audiences with augmented reality? So yeah, that's how I got into the space. I really focused more on augmented reality ads for Meta, and also a little bit for Snapchat at the beginning. But throughout my journey in augmented reality, I've realized the potential of, other uses of augmented reality, namely like web, app-based, other social platforms. And obviously now, glasses and things are coming out now. And I just see such a huge potential, but I also see it's quite a new emerging technology. So essentially it's a niche service for essentially any business or any product that wants to bridge that gap between, audience and brand. And yeah, I think, we don't need to necessarily wait for AR glasses to even come out. We have devices capable of, they're all being built with AR technology already in them. And it's a really good time to start doing it now that it's fairly affordable. It's not, we have to build apps anymore. Now you have social AR, you have web-based AR, and it's quite a new thing. And obviously it has that novelty effect. It's a really good opportunity for people to look at and try and stand out from the competition.
Was there thank you for that. Was there any particular moment, like, in that journey where you're looking at creative and you're like you land on AR and you're like, "Wow, this is the technology that I need to be part of." Was there something that you saw or something that you experienced? Like, what was it that caused you to, like, latch on to augmented reality as an opportunity?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things that when we were working specifically with AR ads, we were looking at certain objectives for the brands that we were doing it for. So one of them was like average order value. Well, actually, it was more to do with like lifetime value, but average order value is like the front runner for the main objective. And then another one was actually more to do with like funnel validation, or like bringing people in and then trying to convert them a bit lower down the funnel. And for both of those cases, I found a way for AR to specifically improve those metrics. Obviously, they improved other metrics as well. But I'd always looked at AR because I've been an avid fan of like immersive technology for a long time. But I'd always looked at it a little bit like a novelty, like, oh, it's probably really good for brand awareness, or it's probably really good for maybe traffic, sending a lot of people who aren't necessarily qualified. But then I found these really specific examples of stuff that we've done that actually improve those really specific things. So the two examples I mentioned is one was actually for a sunglasses brand for children, and it enabled mothers and fathers to try the shades out on their children to see which sort of styles like they matched. And the average order value would have been 2 pairs. And with the AI, it went up to 4. So they immediately had an amazing increase there. And for the cosmetic brand we're working with, we did a gesture-based AR at the top of the funnel. And then we did a top picks with more of a call to action for the lower down the funnel. So we saw the people who interacted with the gesture-based one then would convert much more lower down the funnel. So it's sort of that congruence as well. And then on the site, they also had like a 3D element to it. So, you had that not losing the scent. So I think it was things like that, like really showed me opportunity of like, this is not just a novelty. This is a thing that can be used to really give like a unique experience and also like increase, a better buying purchase decision from the brands.
I really like that use case, and the fact that you were able to double average order value, go from 2 glasses to 4 glasses. That's epic. That's amazing. And I think that's what most, digital marketers want, especially when they're looking at their, KPIs.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's really cool that you can create these sort of like, interactive experiences, that also, save a lot of time and effort. For example, like with that brand, like they would have to order the product, like wear the glasses. Maybe they don't necessarily get the one that they want if it's D2C, or if it's retail, like they have to go physically into the location, try on the glasses. So for you to be able to create that experience for them, and for them to be able to try on, multiple pairs of glasses at home, like that's just so
Mhm.
convenient and so great for the consumer. So I really love that. And I really love your mind for, associating the KPIs with, with the creative. Um, let me ask this, because this is something that I don't know much about. Like, I know what the creative cycle looks like in terms of creating, your average 15-second reel, because that's, majority of what you're going to see like in the news feed. Like, what is the production cycle like for an augmented reality? Like when
Yeah,
when
it's
you get,
good.
yeah, yeah, I'm super curious.
It's a good question. I guess, the way that we tend to work with, the people that come to us is trying to discover like where. So if we're talking specifically about ads, it's trying to discover what's already working, because that's always what people do. You need to take the learnings from the audience and take the learnings from the performance and things like that, and then how can that look in terms of like more of an immersive experience? So with those two examples I showed you, well, I mentioned earlier, it's quite simple, it's quite straightforward. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes, say, if it's a B2B or a service or something, more less physical, it's like, well, how does that look in terms of how can I physically have an experience like in AR with that? So it's really just about what is the emotion or what's the experience you want the customer or the audience to have, and then how could that actually be visualized? And I know that's a very like sort of abstract way of looking at it, but that is how you start. And then from there, you just look at the capabilities of the platform that you're choosing, so web or app or social. And then you're okay, well, how can we visualize this? There's different options such as gamifying. You can use things like portals, which essentially are they're going to put really immersive space in AR. You can do things where it's like interactive and people have gesture based or facial based, or interact with their fingers, and how can that look? And then what is the buyer or customer journey? Like where do you want them to go after that? And obviously once they've had that experience, what's it taught them? And how are they then taking that, experience? And then, how is that helping them with the decisions you're trying to help them make? So the actual production of it really will be, it depends on the complexity. But it can be anywhere between, I'd say 2 weeks to 6-7 weeks, and in really complex stuff it can actually be a lot more. Like we've done stuff that's like almost half a year long, just because the complexity is quite deep. And really a lot of it can come from 2D assets. So if you have a physical product, for example, we'll actually create a lot of things from 2D assets, so just imagery from top, bottom, side, left, things like that. We don't physically need to actually go and scan it. Even we've done some stuff in real estate. We didn't even need to go to the place to scan it, because actually it didn't exist yet. So we essentially just created it from blueprints and models and things like that. So that's like, that's probably the biggest part of it. And then programming it in, writing the scripts, all the parts with the augmented reality and things like that. That can be really depending on the complexity of whatever the experience actually is going to be. So what you would do is our team would handle that, and then we'd give it like a couple of rounds of demos for you to test it out yourself. You could also test it on like small sections of your audience if you wanted to see the response with. And then when the actual campaign is launched, what we'll do is we'll continue to work with people for a 2-month, 3-month period, sometimes even longer, look at the metrics and see how things are going. So if your main objective behind the augmented reality experience was to have, more traffic or having more people click through, then we're looking at the experience and we're seeing the metrics. And of course, all the different platforms have their own unique suite of metrics you can look at. And then we say, okay, there needs to be something done. Let's try this. Let's try and optimize this so that we can see outbound click rate get higher. And then what we'll do is we'll keep doing that and we'll keep optimizing it until we see the result that you want, basically. So I guess it's fairly similar in a way, but there's a lot more sort of quite rigorous testing and debugging that goes on in the initial period, and then optimization.
So I have so many questions. Thank you so much for that. What
No
it like?
worries.
So I know what optimization looks like for doing iterations on static and video creative. Like, what does that look like in the context of augmented reality? Like, do you need
So
to go
once
in and
you, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. No worries. I think I got a little bit of delay in my internet's been terrible.
Oh,
It's
no.
something to do with underground water cables and sharks or something.
It's
Um,
Asia, bro. It's Asia.
yeah, so the way that we're working on optimization really is to actually, once we create those augmented reality experience, it's actually like a working file that we can just go back and look at. Um, the difficulty comes when something needs to be changed with the assets, because then you need to then essentially start over again. But if it's worth it, and it always is worth it, we would do that. But a lot of the times we make sure, because we spend so long in making sure the assets, if it's a physical product, are as pristine and as accurate as possible, that's not usually an issue. Like, I think maybe 99.9% of the time, that's not an issue. The issue comes when it's like what the user is doing and how obvious that look, what are the instructions obvious? Is the experience obvious? Is the call to action obvious? All things like that. That tends to be where it is, because, us as a augmented reality experts and the brand as a brand, you sort of get tunnel vision, or like, you focus a lot on like what you think would work pretty well, but of course you need to actually have that dictated by the audience. So that's why we like to have that optimization period. And then from that, we'll just look at, for example, as I mentioned, like the call to action. If there's something that's not obvious about where the experience is meant to be leading you, then we need to look at that and then actually change parts of the script or change parts of the text overlay or something in it that makes it more obvious and more interactive. And sometimes it could even be a matter of just targeting the right people. So for the example of the cosmetics, it was actually for an older audience. So with a cosmetic, which was actually lipstick based, what we did is we actually started to focus on the gesture being like rubbing your lips like together like that and like
Mm,
chapping them. Because with the older generation, their lipstick would have actually had to do that. Whereas now, not that I'm a lipstick expert, but now they don't have to do that as much. So it's sort of inherent to the older generation to do that. So therefore, we added that in so that
mm.
it just feeds their psychology more, and then it feels more like personal to them. So that's like a little example of it. And then from that, we would see, oh, okay, cool. There's more people that are engaging with that within the target audience we're looking at. So I hope that gives you a bit of insight into it.
Totally makes sense. I love your mind for thinking about where this person is at generationally and then augmenting your gesture to fit their psychology. I think that's genius. Um, Another thing that you mentioned, which was really interesting to me, I'm a long time video game player. So you mentioned gamification. And we know that like gamification and like dopamine feedback loops are built into a lot of our tech platforms right now. What does that look like in the context of augmented reality? Like, have you been able to like use gamification in what you've built so far, or what do you think that looks like moving into the future for augmented reality?
Yeah, I like the gamification element of it, because I think it's the best part of it is that benefits from engagement time being a lot longer, because people don't feel like they're being sold to at all. Like with a native feeling ads, you'll feel a little bit like they're being sold to, but at the same time, you most of the time with augmented reality and the way it's used now, people sort of get distracted by themselves essentially. So that's why they engage for longer. But when you come to like the gamifying element of it, it feels a lot more like, and it's so much more interactive and also authority building, because you're spending longer with that brand's experience. And you have all these, smaller cues and indoctrinations from the brand that are sort of sticking with you and actually lead to a lot more of a memorable experience. And you'll remember that brand over. But the stuff that we've done actually has been more incentive based. So a couple of fast food chains we've created some stuff for is you would basically play the game, and it's a funny game. And it's also one, you can interact with, the social platforms, and you can share it and people can like try to beat your score and things like that. And because you're participating, you then get an incentive. So it could be anything, discount code or join our exclusive members list or whatever. And just, it's almost like the prize is better because you've had to play the game. You've actually invested some of your time into it. So I think that's what works well. And I think the way that this is going to work more in the future is that right now, obviously, one of the biggest platforms for, just TikTok, we don't need to go through like why it's worked so well, but it's that interactive base. And it's people wanting to be part of a community or be part of a trend or something like that. And if people can tap into that with gamifying, and as I mentioned, like duet and try to beat someone's score. So for example, say a celebrity played your game and they got a certain score and it's like, hey, try to beat this celebrity with this game. I think that would just clean the floor with anything else that's going on. And then if you have a way of actually, building out incentives or some sort of exclusivity to it, that's going to make people want to share and come back to the brand a lot more.
I think it sounds like it'd be magical for retention. There's that competitive side in all of us. And if you see, like Taylor Swift at the top of this leaderboard and you get a chance to go and kind of like compete against her and like your peers while winning prizes, like that could be really, really interesting.
Mhm.
And maybe that would be an interesting way to adapt some like there's a lot of loyalty programs for retention, especially in e-commerce. So there might be some like really interesting use cases that come out of that.
Yeah, for sure.
So what in terms of augmented reality, like I've seen a bunch of the videos that you've shared in your group. And some of them uh, I find it astonishing. Augmented reality is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. But I want to know specifically like what are your favorite use cases for augmented reality going beyond the scope of advertising, the things that you've seen, the things that you believe are going to be possible. Like what of those things get you like super excited? You're like, man, I can't believe that this is going to happen. Sort of vibe.
Amazing question, because yeah, this is something I'd like to talk about a lot. Obviously, going back to what I said earlier about people seeing augmented reality as novelty, all of the things that I'm really looking forward to, and actually I'm getting involved in, are things I see completely changing their unique industries. So I guess there's three that I'm more like try to focus on this year. So the first one is automotive, and from some of the work that we've worked on with a third party, is that we helped people to make better purchase decisions and learn more about vehicles. And the way it will work really well is essentially when you're creating the experience, for a new line, you're creating one experience with one asset that people can interact with in a certain way. That like millions and millions of potentially like salespeople or marketing people can reuse over and over again to sell millions and millions of cars. So it's just, not having to put out loads and loads and loads of ads. You just have to try and tweak that one experience to work really well. And it works really well in that you don't need to have somebody physically go to the place as well, because a lot of the stuff we've done, as I mentioned, like it's been from 2D assets. So you're saving a lot of time, a lot of resources, just being able to create it virtually. Another really big one is real estate. So I know the real estate's always been quite far ahead of the game in certain technology, because obviously people are putting a lot of investment into it and they really want to understand it as much as possible. And what I'm really excited about is actually like things like virtual tours and using augmented reality portals to give people the experience of touring property, either a physical one that exists or one that's being developed in real time with a estate, like with an agent or with a realtor, and then both interacting from a completely different place in the world about a property that's not even being built yet. And there's things that we're sort of working on at the moment is being able to go through, do a virtual tour, essentially in a Google Hangouts, and actually change parts of the physical space. So changing the color of the drapes, changing the kitchen layout, changing this, and taking that information back and then putting that into the final deal. So, all of those things wouldn't be possible any other way. Like, I guess 360 video is the closest that we have at the moment. So I'm really excited about the real estate, probably the most out of anything else. And then the others are in-person events as well, because obviously we've had a good couple of years of, being stuck inside. And now I guess really like towards the end of last year and this year, people are having amazing in-person events, and there's so much stuff happening and all these tech events and things that I'm not physically able to go to. And rather than it waiting for it to be a VR metaverse that everybody mentions, I really believe that, AR can be the first iteration of the metaverse, and you can actually be at these events virtually that way. And there can be an AR element of it there. So you will be able to have a portal and you'd be able to go to people's booths and learn a little bit more about them. And then also there's examples I've shared as well of people using AR in conferences. So they have like a unique AR experience when you go to their booth, which makes them just stand out a lot more, makes it way more interactive, way more educational. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just conferences. It could just be anything. It could be like galleries, museums, in-person events, anything like that. even festivals, I think it's Coachella used AR like one of the last year, or maybe it could have been before COVID. I don't remember now. But just giving people like a little bit more of an immersive and unique experience that they're not necessarily going to get somewhere else. I think these are all just super cool, like, very, very futuristic feeling, but, very recent, very, gonna be happening soon, experiences.
For me, it's super exciting. So when you talk about like going to these events, and this is something that I've kind of like noodled around in my head, but maybe you, I imagine, know a lot more than me. Like, let's say I want to go to Coachella and I'm in Thailand, right? In the future, is that going to look like projecting like my like AR avatar into the space, and then everybody else is wearing their glasses and they can see me, or am I there as like am I a ghost, like an AR ghost?
That's really cool. I think both, it could be your, you could have a physical presence there. I guess
Yeah.
that's like where, if it's something where you'd like to be seen, then I think that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, for sure. I guess I've not really thought about it like this. The way I've envisioned it is, you can't make it. You're in Thailand and you can't fly for whatever reason, and you're able to put on your AR glasses or use your mobile device and have a portal, and have the experiences of being in the festival around you. So
Mm,
you're not there physically, but you're having the same, well, not the same experience. It can't be exactly the same, but as close to the same as possible. But I like that element of like you having a augmented reality presence there that people can see. And maybe that's like the future of festivals and things like that, because we know that we've seen it in Fortnite. Like they had a lot of massive festival sandbox and stuff like that, as they've done it as well. But it's only exclusively for the people who are on those platforms, which I know are vast, but it's not everybody. So it could be a thing that bridges all the gaps like that and just has an experience that everyone can join. So yeah, I really like that idea. And I guess there's no, I guess there's no limitation to it other than what the technology and the capabilities are of it at the time.
yeah. Well, I think I have no idea what's going to happen, but I do think that the technology is going to accelerate at a very quick pace. Um, so for what's fun for me is to talk to people like you and just kind of like imagine like what might be possible, and who knows what will actually happen. Um, but I really like the use case that you shared about real estate. I think that's super interesting, especially the customizable option. Like if I go into a virtual house, I can start to kind of like decorate it, and then we can get into what do you think? What do you think about that? This is something that I've also thought about a lot. Because like in video games, like they have like video games had like the first quote unquote NFTs before they were NFTs. They had like
Mm,
digital products that you could buy, digital economies that you could purchase from. And I guess I see the potential for a world where instead of buying like a painting, I buy like an NFT painting and then that's projected through AR into the wall. Like what are your thoughts
mm.
on those sorts of economies and where we might go with that in terms of like real estate and other projects?
Yeah, that's super interesting because I think a lot of it leverages, not leverages, a lot of it depends on the masses, like the adoption of AR. So, for example, if in 2025, Apple will come out with their Apple glasses that replace phones in some respects, and everybody's wearing AR glasses, and everyone is interacting with AR on a daily basis, which I honestly think is just definitely going to happen. But who knows what the time frame of that is? But at that stage, you'll be able to have, as you mentioned, like NFTs, NFT clothing, NFT art, NFT elements that you've purchased, which are unique to you in AR, which everybody can experience. So you'll essentially just be able to wear nothing or just wear like a blank, I don't know, cat suit or something that has like body tracking on it. And then you'd have all your clothing that could essentially just be digital. And that's really interesting because, yeah, there's definitely an element of exclusivity and a lot to do with, people just wanting to, show off a little bit and show their, express themselves in a lot more of a deeper way. So I think at that stage, it could be very important. But yeah, just as like, powerful as that, it could just be something in your house. You could essentially just have maybe a laptop and a fridge, something like that in your house. And then the rest of it is just all being digitally decorated. you could just have like a shell of a house. I mean, it sounds a little bit like Ready Player One already, but that could be something we have, because the value of it, of the items, as we've seen with NFTs and such things like that, is the value of it's more in the digital world than it is in the physical world. So therefore, why would you have the physical element, the physical one of it, when you could have the digital one of it? And then it could actually be transported, when you're moving house or you go into another country to live in, you could just do it all in a snap of a button. You have all your pictures, all your decorations, everything just up and instantly like that. You don't have to have all this boxes and boxes of stuff. I'm just
Don't
saying
have to
this
hurt
because
your don't
when I
have to hurt
moved
your
from,
back. Don't
yeah,
have to hurt your
exactly.
back with all that stuff. Uh,
Yeah. So I
I
think
love
I think that's very likely. Yeah.
And want to circle back to one thing that you said because I think it's super important. Is adoption, and then a sort of like inflection point, this flashpoint. For example, we saw that with GPT chat. There was very few people talking about GPT-3 until GPT chat came out, and now that adoption is accelerated at a very rapid pace. And you mentioned something that I've been thinking about a lot, which is Apple glasses. Obviously, we know Apple is a iconic brand and that it's attached to our sense of status as human beings. Um, so what do you think that will look like? Do you think that will be the flashpoint, or what's your take there in terms of adoption? Because I know we've had, just for context, like a couple companies that have attempted AR glasses and then sort of like burned out. There was Google Glass, there was
Mhm.
the Snap Lens, there was Magic Leap, and I think all of those contributed to the progress. But I'm curious, as the foremost expert on AR, like what your opinion is on where the technology's at and how far
Mhm.
we have to go before we replace phones.
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and I was actually astounded. I obviously I didn't make it out to CES, but I've been watching a lot of people's recaps, mainly for the immersive space, on all of the stuff coming out for AR and VR from tons and tons of brands. And we're getting to the point now where it does feel like it's going to potentially replace mobile devices really soon. Just because I think the catalyst is going to be, obviously status is a big part of it. People like to be parts of, as human beings, we like to be parts of communities and we like to feel like we belong. So I think that's a really big part of it. I think the other big part is utility. And I think AR glasses are going to potentially replace phones, or be in part with phones for a while before they replace them. When people are seeing value in using it day to day. So at the moment, it's just a novelty thing. And a lot of people haven't bridged the gap of saving people time with AR. Whereas with AI, people now can see the value in how much time they're saving. And I know tons of people are now really worried about losing their jobs and things like that, which is very interesting human behavior, isn't it? It's like, well, they've just created something to save you time, and now you're worried about losing a job. It's like you can do more of your job, if anything. But when AR gets to that same position where it's saving people time, so a couple examples off the top of my head would be, say you go to a new country, you've got AR glasses on, you don't speak the local language, you've got real time translation. Boom, you just saved yourself. I've been learning Vietnamese for 6 years. I'm still terrible at it. So for me, it would take myself 6 years of time to be able to interact with people. And obviously, there's always an element of, in business, if you go to a new country and you're trying to interact with people, there's a language barrier. There's all these things like that. So there's things like that. Imagine you go to a new city and you're a vegan, and you've obviously determined in some way on the device that it knows you're a vegan. So all of the vegan stuff's pointed out to you, and it's very clear. And you don't have to go try and explain you can't eat this and this and this. So things like that, when people can see that value in it, they're gonna they're gonna be like, well, phones don't even have that anymore, but don't have that sort of capability. So it's just, that's how it's going to replace it. So I don't see it being that far off. I think one of the other biggest parts I've not mentioned is just the fact that some AR glasses just look ugly. They
Yeah.
just need to be prettier. They just need to be more comfortable. They need to be something that's not, there's almost like no thought about putting them on. Like even now where I got like an Oculus Quest and I put it on, it's like it's a little bit
Yeah.
cumbersome and I feel a little bit sick and things like that. But with AR glasses, imagine it's just like these, you just whack them on and then you just like, boom, your screen is there, you're working. And I think that's not too far off. And I think when people, it's more affordable, 5G networks are more reliable and stronger and more well placed. And there's elements, I think it's all going to come together. Definitely.
I love it. That's something that I'm looking forward to. I know a lot of people's necks have been destroyed over the last like 10 years of phone use. So I think that, maybe chiropractors will be out of a business, but probably
That's so
not.
true.
Um,
Yeah, that's really true. I never thought of it like that, but you're right. Everyone is like walking down the street like this.
I like the possibilities of it because we can have a face to face collaborative conversation. For example, like if we were together, we both have our AR glasses. Instead of like trying to cram behind a computer to look at our ad stats, we could like cast them onto a wall or like 3D space in front of us. Or if we wanted to play like a game of chess, like we don't have to take a chessboard with us. Like we could just
Mm,
kind of like that out into the space. What I'm
interesting.
really excited about is like some of the things that you said, for example, like being able to use like contextualized maps, being able to like auto translate languages, and even to the point of like environmental impact. Like think about how much like store inserts, like all these like physical things that are being printed out could be replaced by augmented reality. So it could actually be really, really good for the environment outside of
Mm,
possibly the electric costs moving to an electric sort of world. Um, what I'm particularly excited about is the ability to track and gamify like certain elements of my life. Like right now, it's really tedious to go and like track my weight lifts, right?
mm,
And I'm a little bit ADHD. My memory's not perfect. I have all these kind of like scattered notes. And in my mind, like these glasses should be able to like scan the environment and say, okay, this is a 45-pound weight. And then it's like seeing me do the reps,
mm,
and then it kind of tracks that for me. Obviously that might be a little bit farther out because it takes a lot of like different element tracking, and I have no idea technically like what that would actually look like. But those are the kind of things that I'm super excited about. Like when you would go, I don't know if you ever played like games like World of Warcraft, but they would have like daily quests, and you would get your like little hit of dopamine.
mm.
So when I go to the grocery store, that could be like a gamified experience, like doing my chores or whatever else, and I get like
Mm.
little points. Like I'm sure as entrepreneur, you may have used some like habit trackers. So I want to take like that and like have that in augmented reality so that I can kind of gamify my life and get more out of myself in terms of productivity.
That's
What
an
do you think
amazing
about that?
idea.
Yeah,
That's an
what about
amazing idea. I've not thought of anything like that, but that makes total sense. Yeah, because working out or yeah, just doing your daily grocery shopping or something like that, you could make it into some fun element and there could be points and you could be incentivized in some way. Yeah, I think that's incredible. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I guess with going to the sort of the workout element of it, I think that is a very likely scenario of um, I mean, they're already using, in sports or cycling and in golf, they're already using LAAR for certain elements of that. There's actually like swimming as well. I'm not quite sure if it's goggles that's used, but you can like track laps and
Oh
it'll tell
wow.
you your time and you can try and beat your time and stuff like that. But I shared recently, I think it's before Christmas, about Mojo Vision. And like in the middle of last year, I believe Mojo Vision shared their augmented reality contact lenses, which were just absolutely incredible. And their examples were the real time sort of location based map. And there was also the workout of basically exactly what you described, like just reps. It tracked your reps and it tracked like the space and things like that. But actually, what they're doing is Mojo Vision have moved away from contact lenses, and I don't actually know why. I tried to read up a lot more on it, but actually, they're now pushing that back in terms of in development. So I don't think that that's going to be, or either someone else takes over and brings them out. Um, but I think that I mean, maybe for workouts, I don't know that many people will work out with glasses. Like I wear contacts because I'm always scared of them falling off and smashing. But something like that would be more practical. But who knows whether they're going to bring that out. But no, I think for your daily life, that's a really a cool way of doing it. And imagine there's a social element to it as well. Like, we're
Mm.
talking about that again, like earlier with the gamifying with celebrities and things like that. Imagine you're working out and it shows you like the Rock's workout and you're trying to like, there's no way anyone could compete with him. But like, imagine you're like trying to get to that level and how much more incentivizing it is. And you could even have like, depending on, it could be like My Fitness, Fitness Pal, or one of those big brands. If they're listening, this is a good idea for you guys. Is you could have like an AR version of that celebrity working out. I mean, it'd be Under Armour,
Yeah.
wouldn't it? And you would do it with him. Like you'd see the technique and the squat technique and make sure your back's straight and all these things like that. And there could definitely be an element of it like that, but making it more fun and making it less like intense and making it more, like gamified. I think that's an incredible idea. I like that.
Thank you, bro. I love it. So you just brought me to another idea that I wanted to share, if it's all right, because I think that you just mentioned something that's super super powerful, and this idea came to my mind because you mentioned like having like The Rock next to you, like working out in AR, right?
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things I think about GPT is that you can train it on specific inputs, right? So you could train it on specific like Dwayne Johnson's like workout program,
Mhm.
and then like let's say you train this algorithm on The Rock, then The Rock could come out with this app where it's a augmented reality personal training app, and he's training you based on like his like the inputs of his workouts, right? And
Yeah.
then you could have a leaderboard with that. And can you imagine like, you buy this app, the AR app, and now you have Dwayne Johnson as like your personal trainer? That would
Mm.
be so interesting and so cool. And I think with augmented reality, you could do that. Like, you could throw up a hologram and get at least a pep talk. Like how developed that gets, I think will take a little bit of time, but I just think that there's so
Mm.
many interesting use cases like that.
Yeah, and in education and in training, like work training, I think it's already been quite established and works quite well. Um, I'm thinking in terms of education. Imagine you have Taylor Swift teaching music, and you have um, I don't know, Stephen Hawking teaching science or something like that, and you could have like this AR version of them teaching, and so much in a way more interactive way. I'm actually jealous of kids coming out now. I'm sure every generation says this about kids, but a lot of this AR stuff I've seen in the education space is so exciting, and I actually want to start learning again just because it's so much more an interactive way. Because the schooling system, without going into it too much, just essentially stayed the same for hundreds of years. Like nothing's really changed about it. And I think this could be a really revolutionary way of actually making kids want to learn and not just like forcing them to learn things that they don't necessarily have use for, which is what I guess I feel like some of my schooling was. And I think with training and things like that, I've shared a couple of examples of engineering training and safety at work training, of making places safer and making people be able to avoid hazards and know a lot more and get trained a lot more efficiently and a lot quicker with a lot less resources and a lot less time of the businesses. And all of these use cases of AR can be uh, you know developed a lot more and used. Maybe even things like surgery. I'm not sure how accurate it can be, but things like that. Being able to track in AR where you should make the incision. Obviously, I'm not a surgeon, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But if you imagine things like that, that could help, really improve people's skill sets and make things a lot safer.
100%. What that brought to mind is in video games they have like tutorial levels, right? Like so you'll go through like the motions of the tutorial. And I think with augmented reality you can recreate that, right? Like you can do an overlay on a car and it can walk you through the basics of like how to be a mechanic, right? Like how to change the oil filter, how to like change the spark plugs. And if you're trying to do that right now, like you either have to have someone else physically show you how to do it, or you have like a book or a YouTube channel or like whatever, like on a computer all oily, instead of like you put these glasses on and then there's an overlay like on the space and it's like right here, pull this, turn this, right?
Mhm.
And I think all of that could be, and I think there's already some use cases with like the HoloLens that's able to do some of that. Um, and I can only imagine where we will be in 10 years. I think we will eventually train surgeons like that.
Mhm.
Hopefully the early, the early stages of that are, we're have some careful backups, but
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to be. I don't want to be a test dummy in that. So, oh yeah,
I
this
don't,
guy's new, but he's being trained on AI. Don't worry. I'd be like, no, I'm all right. I'll, I'll,
yeah,
I'll have
I
someone more
definitely don't,
experienced, please.
I definitely don't want to be one of the first people to do Neuralink because, I like
Mm.
it's funny because I'm somebody that definitely wants to try like the first. I bought like one of the first Vives, and I want to like
Mm.
get into the AR glasses. but I do not want to be one of the first people that puts a chip in my head.
Mm,
I'm gonna give that one a little bit of time.
yeah, I know. I think it's one of those things that needs about 10 years of studies before we know what the effects are. But then other things have just been rushed in that respect. So who knows? Who knows if people are just going to, yeah, just put it in my head and then I'll be the test dummy. We'll let them go first and then we'll see how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we talked about AR and we've talked about GPT very briefly. I want to start with like what is your current take on GPT? And then I want to kind of talk about like where do you see the intersection between these natural language models and augmented reality?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's absolutely astounding. I've been using AI, like it's not really an AI chatbot in respect, but it has the same model API, and I've been using it for a lot of giving me ideas about content and giving me ideas about SEO and stuff like that. I've been using it for a while now. I think I was probably one of the first adopters of. They changed names like 3 times, but it was like I think it was Conversion AI at the beginning, and then it changed its name to Jarvis, and it changed its name to Jasper. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's maybe I'll use 2 different things. I can't remember, but yeah, things like that. I've been using the same models, and I've seen so much benefit in it. Um, and I guess now with the massive adoption of AI, and when the next model of ChatGPT 4, I don't know if it's going to be 4. I don't know how the numbers work, but whatever the next version is, with more like 10 times the parameters, it's going to be insane. Like how well it does, and how much time it saves people. And I think that's really like what I was trying to allude to earlier. And that's the thing that people should focus on is you're not having to do as much menial tasks anymore. You're left to make connections with people more and find ways to help people more and and trying to improve your service more. That's the things you'll be able to focus on a lot more. And I guess with the interaction with AR is I see there being a very close, I think with the only elements of it I've seen at the moment are it being able to track people's faces and things like that, or it being AI being used to like assume a person's form or a car's form or something like that with AR. But I definitely see a lot more um, interactions with it. But I just I struggle to envision what that looks like. I mean, could you have something in the future that's like a mix between, say, Mid Journey and AR, where you envision things on people, like you type a prompt in, it makes someone into like Barney the dinosaur or something like that. There's no there's a practical example, but things like that could definitely be in use as long as the computing power is there. And yeah, I mean that could be something I guess for example, of real estate, you could be. I would wonder what my place would look like with a certain color or a certain thing like that. But with AI, it would all need to be pre-programmed. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to look. And I need to use some sort of cloud server for that. But yeah, I can see it. I can see those two working really, really well together. And yeah, with the language modeling, I think that would be what I would love, and I'm sure this is not far off, but something like Iron Man has with Jarvis and speaking to him, and
Sure.
it already starts to determine it's learned him, so it knows what he's going to do, and it already starts. It goes, oh, I've gone ahead and I've created these 5 blog posts for you and a little bit of an outline, and you just fill in the rest. That's not too far off. I think. I think that's probably the next iteration of it because right now we're having to dictate everything, but when it starts learning people more, it starts knowing what you're already going to do. And I guess there's a little bit of ethics into that as well. There's a bit of a conversation to be had around, well, then who's writing the content then, and who's making those decisions? You being influenced by that way. But yeah, I think it's fascinating, and there's really so much possibility with it.
I think we will get to a point where it feels like almost like you're painting, like you're creating art versus doing work because you'll have. I think we will get to the point where you're able to like generatively create like 3D art the same way that you can do like mid journey stable diffusion images. Um, I think that's only a matter of time. Like we're at like the dial up stage of augmented reality and this like new version of the internet.
Mm,
So I can imagine where we'll be in like the next 10 years. But I think you made a really, really, really important point, and this is a conversation that I've been wanting to have about the ethics of these technologies and the impact they're going to have. So
and
uh, we can start with like where we're at now in terms of like the impact on social media and the use of dopamine feedback loops in attraction and retention, and then the impact of things like the TikTok and Instagram algorithm on attention, productivity, and those two things together. Um, I would love to hear your thought on the ethics, especially when we move towards like right now, you have your phone, right? Like my phone rings, there's a trigger. My habit is to check Facebook reward. I get a little bit of dopamine. But right now, my I'm connected with you. My phone's over there. What does that look like when we start to have these
Mhm.
glasses on all day long, and then tech companies are able to trigger these habits 24/7, well, not 24/7, but like 18 hours a day versus,
Mhm.
the 3 to 4 hours a day or however much we might be using it right now. What do you think about that?
I think it's a really important thing for people to bring to light and to discuss. Because from what I understand about the VR technology, and I don't know a lot, but the ability to be able to track your slight movements in your eyes that equate to certain emotions, that data is being taken somewhere and that data is being recorded and used. So I think we've gone through a period of obviously Facebook had the brunt of it really with first of all Cambridge Analytica and then the iOS 14 updates. And then TikTok came in and then no one's regulating that because it's all based in China. And they're having a lot more data points on people. So obviously there's a big, again, like a sort of different discussion to have about what they're doing and the ethics in that. But I think it's something that people really need to focus on for AR and VR in the immersive space and how much time you're spending in it, how much more powerful it is for people and how much more emotional and immersive. Because that's the whole point of immersive. It's meant to feel like real life. And that can be taken advantage of and that can be used by big companies. And I do think that's honestly, I do think that's part of the agenda behind it is they all want to own the next phone. They all want to own the next mobile device. Or if AR glass is going to be called that, and they'll all monetize it in some way, but that can be done in a way that suits people. And I think the whole thing with the blockchain and DeFi and things like that, we've seen that people can we can all benefit. We don't necessarily just have to be things that need to be done, taking our data and things like that. But there are actually initiatives. So there's one called Project Area by Meta, and it's looking at the ethics of AR and I think VR as well. And it's really that whole project is focused on how do we make AR beneficial to mankind. And I think it's really good that they're focusing on that a lot because obviously I guess they've got a bit of a history of other things. So they want to start this on the right foot. But those discussions are very important to have. And I think as consumers are getting smarter, we're more conscious of these things, or we're more conscious of how our data is being used. But I do honestly think it's an amplification of what we're doing. It's going to be even bigger. So we all need to be very conscious of it, and we all need to be able to own our data, and it be very transparent and be able to do with it what we want. Um, I just don't know how that's going to be. I guess it's just having a discussion about it is enough, and discussion getting wider and more open is really the thing we need to do. But yeah, I guess it's a concern.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your insights. Um, I guess something that shows up for me is thinking about, and I think that it's something that you said that was really important that we need to have a discussion about is like privacy, right? And like how private data is handled in the context of platforms like Facebook. Do you have any thoughts on like what you think that should look like in the future, like taking into account like where we're at as a society?
I think it could all be like available on a digital ledger. Like you have to somewhere there'll be some like centralized, or maybe not centralized, but some place where you're able to see your data and you're able to access it and you're able to know who's accessing that data and you're able to delete parts of it or have control over it. That's what should happen, but I don't know if that is what's going to. And obviously, we're using all these platforms for free, and we're paying with our data, and that's just been a model for a long time. And whether it's been moving away from that a little bit more, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it, but I do think that discussion should be had, and I do think there should be like bigger companies doing this should be held more accountable for these. And I know they all have their own teams that are dealing with things like this. I guess like a big part of it is people just being more conscious of what they're doing and how they're using it, and also mental health. We know that social media and the feedback loops, what we were mentioning earlier, is those are the things that people have been unaware of for a really long time, and it's led to an amplification of bad elements of people's psychology. So that's something that we need to think about going into this, because it's going to be an amplification again, like even bigger. So it might mean that people with certain social anxiety might then spend less time being social. On the flip side of that, that could mean that they have more opportunities to be social. So maybe it has a positive effect on that. So yeah, I guess I'm a little bit torn with it. I'm very excited by the technology, but I do feel like it's something that people need to discuss a lot more and be a lot more aware of.
Absolutely. My I think my biggest challenges are like specifically with social networks and also with video games, because I remember playing World of Warcraft, and they're the ones that kind of like originally started using these dopamine feedback loops,
Mm,
and like they would basically just do different colors for different types of rewards. And it's funny that your brain can't really like make this distinction between blue and purple, and if you make something slightly more rare, it becomes more valuable. um so my concern is more that like people are going to get stuck into AR or the metaverse, and maybe we'll lose some of this like physical time and intention that we have with each other. And then
mm,
the second main concern that I have is like privacy, like what is being done with that data. Obviously, like we know in the US that some of that data gets shared with government partners, things like that. Um, and then there's also the conversation to be had about, like should the user, like for Facebook, for example, like the user is the product, right? Like they're receiving a free product, but they're essentially the product for the advertisers. So something that I think about a lot is like if we're renting our privacy data, like should the users get a portion of the CPM?
mm.
Um, and I guess what I'm hoping to see, because like, have you ever seen this? There's this video mock-up, and I can send it to you later if you haven't seen it, where it's um, someone's take on the future of AR, and they're like in this bus, and then it's just like filled with ads,
Yeah.
right? It's just, like filled with ads. And I think something that might limit our exposure to that sort of experience would be to create a partnership where we're renting our data to these different platforms, and then they
Mm,
get the ability to selectively advertise to us.
mm,
Um, and I think if we don't have that conversation, what's going to end up happening is, Facebook, Google, the AI tech companies are all going to decide that for us. And then, we're going to get some juicy dopamine, and we're just going to not be able to put these glasses down.
mm,
So that's why I really want to have these conversations with people like you, people that are smarter and more knowledgeable about the technology than I am, because, I think it's a conversation that we need to have sooner rather than later, because, maybe we're a couple of years down from the glasses, but like once we hit adoption, it's going to be a different conversation. And same thing with the dangers of augmented reality, or not augmented reality, GPT and machine learning, because this already rolled out, and it's going to have like obvious, or not so obvious, like consequences for us as in the future. And one I think
mm,
about right now, and I would love your take on this, is education, right? Like our formal style of education is, you sit down and you take tests, but now you have GPT, which can answer all your questions. So what is that? What does that do to the? And you talked about education a little bit earlier, so I'd love to hear your take on this. Like how does that impact our education system? How does it impact the like education and intelligence level of the humans we're producing in our society? And like, what do you think needs to be adapted to create, you know, uh, given these technologies, like produce, citizens that are engaged, they are like intelligent, well read, etc., versus using the AI to do everything for us, and you know kind of
mm.
a dumbing down of society. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a concern. And I think that with the massive adoption of ChatGPT, and how much people are overusing it to save themselves time, which is completely understandable. You have things like certain, I don't really know what they're called, but you have things that are able to detect that an AI has written an article or an AI has taken this test, just as you are able to detect plagiarism. Um, that needs to get smarter and smarter, I guess, as well. That's probably
Do,
being trained by the AI, right?
do you know how that works? Because in like
No, it's crazy.
in my mind, it feels like it'd be really hard to pick up natural language and compare that to an algorithm, at least. So I'm just curious. I have no idea how that works. Do you have any intake on how they
Well, it's
would?
weird because surely that means that AI is failing. If it's able to track, if we're able to track the AI is writing it, I don't know how that works at all. I guess it's just taking, I don't know. I can't even think about how it works. Maybe like hash data. It's like
Well,
it's able to detect. Yeah.
someone told me that, and I got to look into this. So audience, make sure you do your own due diligence. That there's metadata in copied text. Like there's
Um,
metadata in photos. Like a photo is going to have like your location, like some geocache data. Somebody told me the other day that like when you copy and paste something from like Google, that it has metadata. But
oh.
I gotta verify the veracity of that.
So you need to almost like launder the text
Yeah,
through
yeah.
some
You would,
system so that it cleans it and no one can find
yeah.
out you're using AI. That's funny.
I think with GPT-4, um, maybe they'll have like algorithms that can keep up with the pace of like adoption, but it seems like we'll get to a point where like it's almost impossible to be able to differentiate between what was created by an AI and what was created by a human.
Yeah.
Um,
I think on the whole, like how I do feel optimistic about AI as I do with AR, in that, everybody's always concerned with the new technology that's coming out and how it's going to make us less human. But this sort of Ready Player One world that we have in our minds of what the metaverse is being painted to be, I believe it's actually going to make us more of ourselves, just as social media did. There's obviously really bad parts of social media. There's really good parts of social media, but it's amplifying parts of ourselves that are already there and giving people more of a voice. And I think the whole movement, the gender movement and other movements have all been powered by the fact that they can have a voice and they can find other people that are like them. So I think AR can and will do that same thing. And I think on the topic of education, it's just going to make all of the information. I think we're going to have a super breed of humans, basically. Like they're going to have access to all this information so much quicker than we were. And as you look at the generations, um, we've got smarter. Like not that our parents really want to talk about it, but because of the education system, well, our access to information has got better, and that's happening more and more and more. But then I guess like there needs to be things in place so that people aren't just being lazy with AI and just using it to answer all their questions on a test or do this or this. So that I guess the whole testing way that we're judging people's intelligence with tests, which I actually think is a bit of a crap way of doing it. To be honest, I think it's actually that doesn't show. Like I failed a lot in school. Like I got as like a D student. The only thing I
me
was good
too.
at languages is a good thing I was good at, but actually I'm terrible at languages too. So the testing doesn't make sense. So maybe they'll find a new way of testing people. Like there'll be more of a relationship building with AI. But oh, you're really good at this. Let's push you to learn more about this and this and this. So I think there could be positive ways it could be used. And I think that, yeah, there just needs to be things in place to be able to stop people from just overusing it and being too lazy with it. Then I guess the AI is going to train that system. So yeah, I don't know. It's it's a weird, it's a crazy world we're living in. I mean, it's just the last couple of years, the technological advancements have been insane. Like in my lifetime, I mean, I grew up before. My childhood was before phones, and we got phones, and then we played on phones. We played Snake, and we called our friends up to go meet, and then when we were with each other, we spoke in person. And now when people meet, I see the younger generation, they just sit on their phones, like texting each other across the table and things like that, which I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be in the future. We're all going to sit around with AR glasses on, like, oh, yeah, cool. This is cool. Like experiencing some sort of mixed reality together, which I guess that can be like, but is that pushing people away from being social, or is that pushing people more to being social? I think it's being pushing people more towards being social.
I think AR is going to bring us back towards social experiences because we're now face to face and not staring. Like I view phones as being more into like a metaverse because you're almost like locked into a completely different world.
Mm.
Whereas augmented reality, if we're both wearing glasses, we're still looking at the same reality together, and we can like play a game, we can watch a movie, like whatever that looks like. We can share that same 3D space. And to the point of your like your points on education, I think augmented reality will be huge for that because have you ever heard of like Montessori school? Like they have this like
Yeah,
interact like playful school. Like you could
yeah,
create
yeah. It's awesome.
you could create learning experiences like that for children and for young adults that are contextualized through augmented reality, where they play little games and they learn and they can mess around with these objects.
Mm.
Or like, let's say you want to explore Africa or like, learn about animals. You can make this it's like you can physically see how big a giraffe is in front of you versus like right now I got to go on YouTube or I have to like look in a book. And I
Mm.
remember one of my first VR experiences when I got the vibe was like I'm in the water and this uh, giant whale just like comes by you and you hear the sound and like how massive it is. And I think in terms of like learning experience, that sort of like experiential learning is going to be huge. And to your point,
100%.
you know, to your point, like we have to move away from standardized testing. I got held back a grade in school, and I thought I was like unintelligent until like I was an adult. So,
Same.
like, I think that our education systems could definitely use an upgrade, and maybe there's a possibility there with augmented reality and AI to drastically improve output.
Mm.
So I appreciate you sharing like a positive side to that. Sometimes I have a tendency to go towards like the oh no, like is this going to make us like less intelligent? So I really appreciate that you have a positive perspective on the future of humanity.
Mm.
Um, One thing that we've only touched on a little bit, and I wanted to get your take on is the metaverse. You mentioned that you have one of the virtual reality units. Like, what's your take on like where that is now in terms of technology? Where do you see it going in the future? And how does that contrast with the acceleration of augmented reality?
I think it's a really interesting space. First time I put a VR headset on, I was just like, "This is the future." Like, I don't want to be out of this VR headset anymore. And then I started getting sickness, and I was like, "Oh, okay, actually, this is horrible." This is like being on a boat and not being able to get used to it, not be able to get the sea legs. Um, but the interactions you have with people, just as we were just talking about in AR, is much more personal, much more powerful. And I think with the metaverse concept, there's a lot of hype, especially during COVID. I know all these things accelerated a lot because people were essentially forced into staying in their homes and finding a new way of interacting, especially the older generation who are not used to that at all. And then I feel like, you know, the the concept of the metaverse is really Meta's concept. I think it's just that that's what they're just the first big player in the game, so they're pushing it out to people. But I really think whatever that concept is, and whatever it's going to be called, it's essentially going to be like the internet was when the internet first came out. It's like a medium that everyone can interact with on different websites or different portals or different spaces. And whether that's going to be mixed between AR, VR, and MR or XR, and it's going to be both physical and one you can actually experience in the day to day world, or one you're putting a headset on and you're in your own virtual reality space, is still up for grabs. But I guess my feeling is the biggest places that we have a congregation of people at the moment who are all experiencing essentially what a metaverse is. You already have things like Fortnite and Decentraland and things like that. They're already there, and people are already interacting. There's already their own currencies and their own uh, communities, and people are going in there, as we mentioned earlier, like going and playing music and spending a lot of time in there. I think they're all going to somehow bridge the gap together, and we'll all be able to have our own physical lives and digital lives. And whether they'll echo each other, I'm not quite sure. But I feel like that whole concept of it being a VR metaverse is much further off than it being an AR metaverse. A mix between physical and digital reality in our day-to-day lives seems so much more likely to happen sooner. And the way we will interact with each other, I guess it will be more personalized than VR is. So I think the way it's going to work first is more of a working environment. So people will probably use the utility of AR and VR will probably be more for like virtual offices, and people have virtual meetings and that. I think that's actually how it's going to be first. And then it'll be conferences, and then it'll be events, and then da 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 da. And then we'll be able to have like day to day, interactions with the AR outside of that. But yeah, I guess it's all just being built. I mean, that's what's so fascinating about it. And that's why, I'm in this space as it is, because we are like developing it as it's happening right now. And we're all doing it. And that's why this discussion should be happening all the time. We're the people who are deciding how things will be working. Because, our children are going to grow up in this world as well. So we don't want it just to be owned by one or two big people who are just dictating what it's doing. Like it shouldn't be that way.
So that beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Within that, I was imagining like a virtual like podcast studio, and like we could be there
Mm,
together. It's like
yeah.
metaverse. Um, but one thing that you pointed to is like, who is going to be in charge of these technologies. That's something that you've like brought up a couple times. What's your take on like Web3 decentralization and like the cryptocurrency revolution?
I think it's incredible. Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest problems in the world is the fact that money is essentially funneled through one pre-existing concept. Well, it's free, it's just pre-existing construction. And there's only certain people who can do with it what they will and almost dictate its value. And they're very threatened by this emerging technology, which has already been proven and it's already working really well. And it's only a matter of time before it takes over. And I'd be very happy for it to take over. To be honest, I think we'll be able to get a lot out of a lot of the problems we've had as economies with this sort of transparent, decentralized system. I don't know too much about it. I have dabbled a little bit in it just for my own sort of self interest, but I do think it's just the ability of everything being transparent is a very crucial one, because then it's decisions are being made by people on the whole rather than a few sort of big powers. So that I think that's a really big benefit, and being able to have a value based, in something not physical as well, um, which I guess I had been for a while because the gold standard sort of disappeared and money is not based on gold anymore. But it being able to be easily, like for example, going back to like NFTs, like say you get contract out on a new apartment or a new condo or whatever, that whole thing could be done with an NFT. You'd have this digital signature that says that you own it, and it's very secure and it's easy transferable, and it could be done instantly. You haven't got pay loads of fees, admin fees for this purpose to do these things. It just makes everything so much easier. So I think we're in a very new time of it. And I guess a lot of the things are just coming out, and we're currently doing a very human thing of seeing value in the wrong parts of it. But I think that's just what we're like. We rush to capitalize on something new soon. But I think, we're at the bell curve, and we're sort of dying down. I guess it's all going to come up very gradually, as we're seeing, with the value things like Bitcoin. It's very gradually started to come up again, in the last couple of days. Um, so I think that, all technologies that are in this Web3 space, they're all starting to do that now. We've had the initial hype, and we're all now going to start seeing a lot of the hype stuff die down, and the things that are going to remain are going to start back up again. And it's quite bad for some people in the space who are starting up things that they've all died and they've crashed and burned, and the real ones are sort of going to stay and remain, and slowly going to start building up. But yeah, it's a super exciting space to be in. I'd love to learn a lot more about it.
Beautiful. I appreciate your insights there. Something that I think we're both on a learning journey together. So hopefully we can continue that. So I want to do like a quick thought experiment if you're open to it, just a creative experiment to kind of like think about like given the the stuff we talked about today, augmented reality, cryptocurrency, GPT. I want you to spend a couple moments and just think about what do you think the world is going to look like 10 years from now? Like what kind of world are we going to be operating in? Like what is AR going to look like? What is GPT going to look like? Like what is the human experience going to be like in a decade from now?
So I think we're all going to be. This is my vision. This is so that video you mentioned earlier.
Mm,
It's funny because that's one of my first experiences of it's like a AR concept piece created like 8 or 9 years ago, and it was just like a massive headache. And the way we had advertising when I was growing up was like just ads on TV, and you had to sit and listen for 5 to 10 minutes. People were just spewing nonsense at you. And then we had the internet, and then we had pop-ups everywhere. We just couldn't you couldn't close them fast enough. They're just appearing, and things are just becoming more and more native and personalized. So this is my vision of the world in sort of 5 or 10 years is essentially the same structures that we have now, but we all have AR glasses on. We're all walking around. We all have some very personalized elements of it. We may even have a assistant that's basically just a virtual avatar, which we may have purchased. Maybe it's an NFT. Maybe it's a real life version of a board
I
ape or
need that.
something.
I need that.
And it's like telling you it's basically your imaginary friend in a way. You know, some of us had that as a kid, and it's helping you like navigate the world, and it's like guiding you, and it's like completely personalized to yourself, and no one else can see it, or maybe they can. Who knows? It's could be like this. You know, you see in like animes and stuff like that. Everyone always has this like little animal that goes around with him and navigates, helps them navigate the world. So I think something like that, and that will be completely AI based, and it will just make our lives more social. We'll just be able to interact with people more. We'll be able to spend more time on doing the things we love, like, you know, developing our relationships with people and being artistic and being musical and enjoying each other's presence. And hopefully it makes, the world a little bit more of a more even place with all the other things that are coming in with Web3 and, the sort of poorer countries are like now using cryptocurrency as their main currency and propping up the economy that way. So I don't know, there's going to be more acceleration of that and just a more even world, like basically a utopia is what I'm imagining. It's a utopia with AR glasses. And I think that if we're using technology in that way to benefit all of mankind and benefit the planet, obviously, as you mentioned a lot earlier, like saving a lot of time having to fly unnecessary flights and polluting the world and create loads and loads of material, printing materials of flyers and all that stuff doesn't need to happen anymore. It's all just completely virtual. I guess that's sort of in my mind, like what it is. But it's also something that we're in control of. We're not just being fed dopamine like for doing certain things. We're not being given these dopamine incentives by big companies. We're able to, like sell our data back to the companies if we want. And that means we can pick and choose what products we're being shown as well. So yeah, I guess something like that.
I love it. One of the things I really admire about you from this conversation is you're an optimist, right? I think that I can tend towards being a little bit of a pessimist, but I choose to be an optimist. But you just have such a bright and beautiful view of the future, and I just really really appreciate that. Um,
Thanks, man. I'm not
I don't,
sure if my wife would agree, but
well,
it's nice to hear.
no worries. I know how that goes. Um, so I appreciate you sharing that perspective of the future. Um, I guess what I
How
want
about you?
to
How about you, man? How do you see the future? It'd be interesting to see if yours is similar.
So I think it depends on the direction that we decide to go as a society. Like technology amplifies more of like who we already are, right?
Mm.
So we've identified sort of the challenges of these like dopamine feedback loops, and I think that is the biggest barrier to deciding like what happens, and also if we move towards decentralization versus centralization of power.
Mhm.
Like if the power goes into the hands of small groups of people, And then these technologies are used to like amplify control. I think that can be kind of scary. What I'm hoping for is, the utopia that you describe where we move towards, personal responsibility. Everybody has an AI that can sort of like help them out.
Mm,
We use AI to solve some of our major systemic problems, right? Some of the systems that don't work. And we create a more equitable and fair world where everybody has access to technology, housing, um, and the basic needs of human life. That's the direction that I would like to go. My concern, at least on where we're at now, is this like increasing inability to communicate and radicalization on both sides of the spectrum, and maybe that's part of the process of leading us towards this utopia. But I guess my concern is around this like gap area where we move towards that, because for power to become decentralized, that means people are going to have to give up power.
mm,
We're gonna have to have conversations with businesses like Facebook and say, hey, we want a piece of the pie. We want you to stop like beaming dopamine into our brains every 30 seconds. We want you to make less addictive products. And I think that those conversations are difficult because it takes money and power away from, the people that have it. And historically, that has only happened through the context of social movements or violence, and I'm not someone that wants to see like any bloodshed. Um, and I think in the current political spectrum, like we kind of discount the fact that our disagreements can lead towards violence, and that technology can lead towards this idea of control. So I'm
mm.
mindful of that, but hopeful for the perspective that you shared, where we can use this to like sort out our differences, like build systems that work for everybody, and use technology to build something where people can use augmented reality AI to solve problems for humanity versus like lusting after power and control. Because
Mm.
I I don't think that that's what gives people a happy life. And what I want to see is more opportunities for the people that don't have it, in a more fair playing field. And I think AI can do that. Like I've shown it to people here in Thailand, like local business owners, and it blows them away in terms of like the ability to collapse their time.
Mm.
I took one person, they were doing 45-minute social posts, and now they can do their captions in 3 minutes with edits. Um, so I'm hopeful, but I'm I'm concerned about like what does that middle period look like, and who's going to fight for what.
Let's go on.
Um,
Yeah, I love that.
well, I hope this is the first of many conversations because I've really appreciated this. The one
Yeah,
the
me too.
one last thing that I wanted to ask you, because I know our time is coming up. Um, there's going to be like entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs, that are going to be growing up in this world, and hopefully they listen to this podcast. What advice would you have for entrepreneurs that are getting started? They're just kind of getting into this world, and they're going to be impacted by all these technologies. Like what advice would you have for them?
Mm. I think something that a realization I had, there's two big realizations I had last year. One was don't throw money at problems ever. Always try
Okay.
and solve it. Yeah, like, well, I guess you do need help. There's always things that you need to learn from people, but the way don't do it through paying. I guess I don't mean don't do it through paying. I just mean like don't throw money at problems in terms of like have no like awareness or consciousness and just and expect someone to solve problems, because in the context of paying someone money, that it can be that their value is based on the fact you're paying them, and not that they actually care intrinsically about the problem. So I guess hopefully that explains it well. And I guess that's something I was doing in my own business a little bit, and of no fault of my own, I basically ended up holding myself back doing that. When I started looking at trying to solve problems myself instead of, you know, obviously I definitely recommend finding a mentor or finding someone who's a coach who's in a place you want to be in, and definitely 100% do that. Or I just don't mean like, yeah, don't just assume that money's going to fix loads of problems. Most of the time it doesn't. It actually probably brings you more problems. And the other one is, again, like a lot of people say this, like, but don't be afraid to fail. Like failure is such an important part of growth. And I guess it's something we were discussing like right at the beginning. You know, you need to see opportunities of growth where they are and not see them as, oh, I have to give up now because something I thought, like the expectation I had didn't come to fruition, therefore I failed. No, it's like you haven't seen past the goal that you have. So you don't know how that's going to look. You know, like life is not a straightforward path. It's one with all sorts of wiggles and turns, and you have to keep diverting all the time. So I think it's just those two are really, really important things if you're looking to start your own business. And I guess the other one is how important people are as well. You do tend to get, you know, as an entrepreneur, you tend to get quite stuck in your zone and you don't mix with a lot of people. And I also think there's a good side of that as well, because my first couple months in this country, I just partied. I had a bit of money and I was like, oh, it's like I was on holiday all the time. And I was just like, oh, just go crazy. And hanging on with a lot of other people that had that same, reality, and that's fine. But they were all in another place to where I was. So it's not necessarily good for you to just have that obviously you need to enjoy yourself, but be very conscious of the people you hang around. I guess that's my point I'm trying to get. I think the best scenario is to be around people who are either in the same place as you, going through the same problems, and you can all discuss those problems with each other. Have like a mastermind, even like where you go, you have times. I think that's actually been one of the, well, I know that's been one of the big pivotal parts of my growth is I met 5 guys here. One guy that actually left, I'm in Da Nang, Vietnam, and he's left to go live in Portugal now, but we met very regularly and we were all entrepreneurs. One of us just became super successful and he just sold his business and traveled around the world. So more power to
Awesome.
him. And the rest of us are, yeah, fairly successful and we're doing well. But what we've done is we've met up and we've had 15 minutes each time and to discuss what our problem is. And everybody comes with a new, unique perspective on it. And it's just that matter of having people around you, you trust their perspective enough to embody it yourself, because you'll just look at your own things in tunnel vision. So being around people who are with that growth mindset, again, like that's a very important part of it as well. And having access to people who know way more than you and have a lot more experience than you, and they can see themselves in you and they're willing to like coach you. That's another important. But I guess that's one of the most difficult things to find, because I guess it's a hard conversation to start having with someone at the beginning. So I'd say those 3 things are the most important. Like, I guess the fourth, if there was a fourth, would be like, take yourself out of your comfort zone. I was living in England and I was working, with a local council and I was getting paid okay. And I lived, near my parents and all these things. And of course, if that you're happy with that life, that's fine. I'm guessing by the fact you're listening to this, you're probably not in that life and you're looking to, either you already have moved out of your comfort zone or you're looking to move out of your comfort zone. Just do it, because having a wage is the most addictive thing, and it will stop your growth so much. It will stunt your growth forever. And I've had moments where I've gone back to work with people and to have a salary to be safe, and it's stunted my growth. You have to be uncomfortable, and you have to be willing to either eat. I had like for a couple of years I ate banh mi, which is like like a Vietnamese sandwich. It cost
Mm.
10K, which is like 30 cents or something like that. I
Oh
just ate
wow.
like 2 of those a day, and I just lived in an apartment that was like $150 a month. And I did that. Like, you just have to do something like that. You have to be willing to do something like that to be able to get to where you are. And since then, I've been able to appreciate what I had based on what that was. So I guess those 4 things, like, having mentors, having good people around you, don't try and throw money at problems, get out of your comfort zone. And yeah, just try and get used to being uncomfortable and failing. I think those are my biggest things.
Those are all huge. I really appreciate you sharing those. Those definitely line up with my own experiences. So I think that that's magical advice. Thank you. Um, well, we're right on time. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before we close things up today?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been an awesome discussion. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I realized we're just neighbors. So if you're ever in Vietnam or I'm in Thailand, we should meet up, have a
I'm
have a
a, I'm a,
discussion in person.
I'm gonna link with you for the next border run, and I would love to come to one of your mastermind group things if that's something that's open.
Yeah, for sure.
It would
Yeah,
just
definitely.
it would just be for me, like, to the point of what you said, like, I love spending, time with like-minded people because I spent so much time, like, where I would talk about entrepreneurship with friends, and then, you'd kinda, like, see them like, blank out. And especially with, like, even with AI and augmented reality, like, even entrepreneurs, like, to some level would, like, kinda, like, filter out because they didn't necessarily get it. So, to be here with you and to talk about things that are really exciting for me and the impact is really meaningful. And I just want to thank you for your time and for being here today. It means a lot to me.
You too. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was amazing. And I'm having a AR business creator networking event. It's going to be in the middle of April, the 18th of April, I believe. I'll double confirm with you like the date. But if you're around that time, that'd be great. We'll have someone from Meta here. We'll have some Meta Spark creators, some businesses, and we're just going to be talking about augmented reality use cases for businesses, basically. So that's going to be cool.
Yeah. Beautiful. Sign me up. Sign me up for that. I'll be there.
Awesome.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for your time. Yeah. Thank you, brother. Happy Friday and have a great weekend in your new place. I hope it's magical and that you have a lovely time.
Thanks, man. All right.
Thank
Have a good
Cheers.
day.